You've probably heard it before. She swears she'll never leave, that nothing could ever break the bond you share. And when life is good, when the money flows, and your strength is intact, those words feel like anchors in the storm. But what happens when you lose your job, your health, or your status? What happens when the very things that made you valuable in her eyes suddenly collapse? For many men, that's when the silence begins, the affection fades, and loyalty evaporates without warning. In this video, I'm going to reveal a disturbing truth that history has already proven about women's loyalty, a truth most men refuse to confront, but every man needs to understand. If this already has you questioning what loyalty really means, here's something simple you can do right now. Subscribe, hit like, and leave a quick comment. Just type YES if you've ever wondered whether love is truly unconditional, or NO if you're convinced it always is. Either way, your response matters. And keep watching, because I'm about to show you how this question has played out in real men's lives, with consequences far more painful than most can imagine. She told you she would never leave. She swore that nothing in this world could break the bond between you. And when you were standing tall, healthy, earning well, admired, her words sounded like gospel. You wanted to believe her. Every man does. Because deep down, every man is terrified of finding out what happens when the ground beneath his feet crumbles. Now imagine this. You lose your job. The paycheck that once made you the provider dries up overnight. Or maybe depression hits you harder than any enemy ever could, stealing the fire in your eyes. Maybe your body betrays you with sickness, and suddenly you're not the strong protector she once leaned on. That's when the promises start to tremble. That's when you notice the hesitation in her eyes, the silence at dinner, the way affection starts to evaporate without explanation. And in that moment, you begin to ask the question no man wants to face. Was her love truly unconditional? Or was it tethered quietly but firmly to the value you brought to the table? This is the crack in the illusion. This is where doubt begins to grow. Because what looks like eternal loyalty in the sunshine of your success can wither like a fragile plant the moment the storm arrives. The painful truth is this. Loyalty isn't something you assume, it's something life will test. And when that test comes, you may not like the answer you discover. History sometimes sets up experiments no researcher could ever ethically design. One of the harshest took place in the Siberian Gulag system, where millions of men, soldiers, scholars, farmers, and poets were stripped of everything that once defined their worth. Status, wealth, reputation, even freedom, all erased in a single moment. In that world, the risks of staying loyal weren't just emotional or financial. For a woman to remain tied to a prisoner often meant social exile, loss of livelihood, and sometimes even persecution of her and her children. Choosing to stay wasn't just about sacrifice, it was about survival in the most literal sense. That is why the Gulag became history's unintentional laboratory. With men reduced to numbers and women forced into impossible decisions, illusions about unconditional love could not survive. Letters at first came daily, then weekly, then stopped. Visits became harder, then ceased. For many men, the final blow wasn't the cold of Siberia. It was the silence from the woman who once swore forever. Now, of course, life today is not Siberia. Losing a job, facing depression, or struggling with illness is not the same as being branded an enemy of the state. But the Gulag revealed something beyond its unique horror. It showed us how loyalty bends under unbearable pressure. And while our modern struggles are different, the underlying principle remains. When value collapses, whether through political persecution or personal crisis, loyalty is tested in ways most men never imagine. The Gulag then is not a direct comparison to our lives. It is a mirror, magnifying truths about human nature that still play out today, even in less extreme circumstances. At first, it looks like devotion. The letters pour in, the packages arrive, and the promises echo through the prison walls. But time is the great filter, and loyalty often fades faster than hope. The pattern revealed itself with surgical clarity. Daily letters became weekly, then monthly, and then nothing at all. Food parcels, once the lifeline for survival, grew smaller, less frequent, until they stopped arriving altogether. What followed was not just silence, but replacement. Men in the camps would learn, sometimes in the most brutal ways, that their wives or fiancés had already moved on. A businessman sent away for a political offense received divorce papers within months of his sentencing. A decorated soldier discovered through rumor that his fiancée was already carrying another man's child before his trial had even ended. One prisoner described opening a letter that contained not only his wife's goodbye, but also news of her remarriage, delivered in the same envelope as his death sentence. It wasn't dramatic betrayal, fueled by rage or revenge. It was quiet, efficient, almost bureaucratic in its cruelty. Life demanded that women choose stability over sentiment, survival over sacrifice, and so they replaced. Quickly, consistently, predictably. For the men left behind, this wasn't just heartbreak. It was a collapse of identity. To realize that the love once sworn as eternal could dissolve within months under pressure, that was a wound deeper than frostbite. Because it proved something no man wants to face, that loyalty is not fixed, but conditional, shifting with circumstance. The painful revelation is this: most women don't walk away because they hate you. They walk away because, in the brutal arithmetic of survival, staying becomes too costly. That cold, quiet calculation cuts deeper than anger ever could. Think about how money works. It flows toward value, toward whatever offers the best return, toward whatever seems secure. And when that value disappears, so does the investment. What the Gulag revealed, and what modern life confirms, is that loyalty operates the same way. A woman's devotion, her affection, her dedication, these are not mystical gifts floating free of reality. They are investments tied to what you represent, what you provide, and what you can offer. When you are strong, capable, and resourceful, her loyalty feels unshakable. But when those pillars collapse, the emotional balance sheet changes. Picture it like a photograph left in sunlight. At first it is vivid, rich with color, filled with warmth. But slowly, almost invisibly, the image begins to fade. The lines blur, the colors drain away, until all that remains is a shadow of what once was. That is how loyalty works when your value declines. It doesn't vanish with a thunderclap. It erodes, piece by piece, until you wake up one day to find it gone. This is not about cruelty. It is not about your woman plotting in secret, rubbing her hands with malice. It is about a deeper psychology, one that weighs resources, stability, and survival. Love in this frame isn't poetry, it's economics. And when you understand it this way, the patterns stop looking like betrayal and start looking like inevitability. The brutal climax is this: loyalty is never unconditional. It is always tethered to circumstance, bound to value. And if you believe otherwise, you are building your life on sand. So don't mistake this truth as personal rejection. It isn't proof that your relationship is uniquely flawed. It is proof that human loyalty, especially under pressure, follows the cold laws of exchange. And if you want to navigate love wisely, you must first accept that reality. Every rule has its exception. And in the harsh wasteland of history, a small group of women stood out like fire in the frozen dark. They were called the Decembrist wives. When their husbands were sentenced to exile in Siberia after the failed uprising of 1825, these women faced a choice. Most would have stayed behind, preserved their comfort, rebuilt their lives. But these few made a different decision. They left everything: wealth, status, family ties, and followed their men into exile. Some walked thousands of miles across frozen wilderness just to stand in line outside a prison gate. They carried food packages, smuggled letters, and navigated bureaucracies designed to crush hope. They endured social exile, economic ruin, and personal hardship. And they did it, not for recognition, but because they could not imagine abandoning the men they loved. Their loyalty wasn't passive waiting. It was active combat against a system built to sever bonds. These women fought tooth and nail to keep connection alive, even when it cost them everything. But here's the reason their names became legend. They were the rarest of the rare. In a world where abandonment was the predictable pattern, their devotion was extraordinary. So extraordinary that history preserved their memory precisely because it was so uncommon. The lesson is not that unconditional loyalty is impossible. It exists. The lesson is that it is so rare, so exceptional, that when it happens, the world cannot help but take notice. And if you are waiting for that kind of loyalty as the norm, you are waiting for a miracle. Why does this happen? Why can devotion that once seemed eternal suddenly fade? The answer doesn't lie in poetry or vows. It lies in the deep structure of human psychology, shaped by evolution. For millions of years, both men and women made choices that maximized survival. For women especially, attaching themselves to a partner who could no longer provide or protect wasn't just inconvenient. It could mean life or death for them and their children. That ancient programming still whispers beneath the surface today. When a man's resources, status, or ability to protect collapses, a kind of alarm system can activate in the female psyche. It doesn't mean she consciously wants to betray him. It means her instincts begin to evaluate the situation differently, nudging her toward choices that once ensured survival. But here's where nuance matters. Biology shapes tendencies, not destinies. Most women don't wake up thinking, "My partner lost his job, now I'll leave." Instead, subtle shifts happen. Affection decreases, plans feel uncertain, intimacy weakens. Sometimes, yes, this culminates in abandonment. Other times, women resist those instincts, making choices rooted in values, love, and moral conviction. Biology provides the pressure, but individuals still choose how to respond. History showed us this duality with painful clarity. In the camps, many women replaced their men quickly, but a rare few, the Decembrist wives, defied every survival incentive. Their loyalty proved that instincts don't dictate everything, yet the rarity of such cases also proved how powerful those instincts can be. What makes this even harder for men is the mind's way of rewriting history. Once the switch flips, a woman may genuinely believe she never loved as deeply as she once claimed. This isn't manipulation. It's a psychological defense mechanism that allows her to move forward without contradiction. The brutal climax remains. Biology is stronger than promises. But the full truth is this: while instinct sets the stage, it is human choice that decides the ending. And unless you understand both forces at play, you'll always mistake instinct-driven survival shifts for personal betrayal. When the letters stopped, when the visits ended, when the silence replaced the warmth of once passionate promises, this was the moment many men in the camps described as the true breaking point. For them, the cold wasn't the most lethal enemy. It was the sudden collapse of meaning. Some men couldn't bear it. Their identity was built on being loved, being needed, being someone's source of stability. When that foundation dissolved, they had nothing left to stand on. These men often withered quickly, not because their bodies gave out, but because their will to keep going evaporated. Betrayal broke them more completely than hunger or frostbite ever could. But others chose differently. They felt the same shock, the same tearing apart of their inner world, yet they used it as raw material for transformation. One survivor recalled the day he received his wife's letter announcing her new marriage. He said a part of him died that day. But alongside the death came something new. Clarity. Not hatred, not despair, but a stripping away of illusion. In that clarity, he realized that survival couldn't depend on anyone else's loyalty. If he built his sense of worth on another person's devotion, he would always be fragile. And so, he began to reconstruct himself, not as a man who needed validation to live, but as a man who could generate strength from within. This is the dividing line betrayal creates. For some, it becomes the final wound, the one they cannot recover from. For others, it becomes the forge, heating and hammering them into something unbreakable. The pain is unavoidable. You don't get to skip it. But what you build from the ashes is your choice. And here's the deeper truth. Betrayal does not only reveal the limits of another's loyalty, it reveals the limits of your resilience. It asks the question every man must face. Will you collapse with the weight of abandonment, or will you let it carve out a stronger version of yourself? The men who rose from betrayal didn't do it by denying their pain. They did it by reframing it. Instead of asking, "Why did she do this to me?" they asked, "What does this reveal about reality?" The wound stopped being a curse and became information. Abandonment was no longer just heartbreak. It became data about how human relationships truly work. Loss stopped being the end and became the beginning of reconstruction. From that shift in perspective came discipline. The survivors learned that when the outside world is unpredictable, you must create an inner world of structure. They built daily rituals that gave order when chaos surrounded them. Wake at the same time, no matter the circumstances. Train the body, not for appearance, but for resilience. Work on a craft, not for recognition, but because mastery itself strengthens you. Every act was a declaration. I generate my own meaning. No one else controls it. This process is not about bitterness or rejecting relationships. It's about building an identity that is no longer fragile, an identity that doesn't collapse when loyalty fails. Modern psychology calls this internal locus of control, the ability to see yourself as the source of strength and purpose, rather than waiting for it to be handed to you. And here lies the paradox. The man who no longer needs loyalty is often the one who inspires it. When you radiate independence, resilience, and mission, others naturally want to align with you, but by then, it no longer controls you. Her loyalty becomes something you appreciate, not something you depend on. This is the essence of masculine sovereignty. Not isolation, not arrogance, but the freedom to stand unshaken whether someone stays or leaves. The ability to value love without being destroyed by its absence. The men who embraced this shift discovered a truth most never learn. When you reframe betrayal as education, you reclaim power. And when you build your mission on inner foundations, no external storm, not even the loss of loyalty, can take it from you. The lessons of history are not meant to stay trapped in the past. They are warnings and guides for the present. Today, studies consistently show that financial stress, job loss, and illness are among the top triggers for divorce. Surveys reveal that both men and women adjust attraction and commitment based on perceived value. In other words, the same dynamics exposed in the Gulag still operate now, just in subtler, everyday ways. So how do you apply this knowledge without becoming cynical? By turning it into a roadmap for growth. Here's a simple but powerful framework for reclaiming your strength. In the first 30 days, focus on awareness. When setbacks hit, whether losing a job, facing health issues, or struggling with confidence, pay close attention to subtle shifts in your relationship. Is her tone changing? Is affection fading? Don't overreact, but take note. Awareness is your first shield. By 60 days, shift into rebuilding. Establish rituals that reinforce resilience, consistent sleep, daily exercise, structured financial habits, and practices like journaling or meditation. These aren't luxuries, they're anchors that keep you stable when external support falters. Modern psychology calls this self-regulation, the ability to create stability from within. By 90 days, define your mission. Ask, what am I building that cannot be taken away? For some, it's a career or business. For others, a craft, a cause, or personal mastery. The mission is not about impressing anyone. It's about creating a foundation that endures, even when loyalty doesn't. Here's the climax. Loyalty is not the bedrock. Mission is. Love can enrich it, loyalty can strengthen it, but they cannot replace it. When you build your life on a mission, betrayal loses its power. And when loyalty comes, you receive it as a gift, not as oxygen you cannot live without. We've walked a long path together, from the tearful promises of forever to the harsh lessons of history, to the instincts shaped by evolution, to the choices men must make when loyalty fails. Along the way, we've seen that women are not villains in this story. They are human, responding to pressures and instincts just as men do. The Gulag revealed this truth in its most brutal form. Modern life continues to echo it in quieter ways. The central lesson is clear. Loyalty, whether male or female, is rarely unconditional. It bends under pressure. It shifts with circumstances. It is influenced by forces deeper than words. That may sound harsh, but it is liberating. Because once you stop expecting unconditional loyalty, you stop being broken when it doesn't arrive. Here is the paradox. Only when you no longer need loyalty do you truly become the kind of man who inspires it. But by then, you've already built your foundation on something stronger. Your mission, your discipline, your sovereignty. Her loyalty, if it comes, is appreciated. But it no longer defines you. This is not about rejecting love. It's about putting it in its proper place. Love and loyalty can enrich your life, but they cannot be the ground you stand on. Your mission must be that ground. Because missions endure. They remain when betrayal happens, when circumstances shift, when relationships end. If this message has challenged you, it means you're ready for growth. So take the next step. Subscribe to this channel for more truths that will change how you see relationships and yourself. Like this video, share it with another man who needs to hear it, and drop a comment about what this truth means for you. This isn't an easy message, but the strongest men are forged by hard truths, not comforting lies. And if you choose to build your life on mission, not illusions, you'll discover a freedom no betrayal can ever take away.